I was going to call up an amendment.
The senator from Oklahoma.
Number 2829, but I've chosen not to do that because the plan on the manager of the bill is to table it. So I'm just going to talk about what it is and just make a few observations. 4 years ago, we got the GAO to start a process on duplication, to look at what we're doing in multitude of areas across the whole federal government. That'll be finished for the first time. They will have taken a complete look. We'll see it at the end of this month or the first part, the fourth report on that. One of their recommendations was, according to early learning and child care programs within 8 different departments, 45 separate programs. 8 different departments within the administration, 45 separate programs, spending $16 billion a year. And the amendment that I was going to put up would have forced us to do the metrics, to look at what our outcomes are, would have forced us to consolidate other than major programs like this one that we're debating today, which has been markedly improved and enhanced. But I understand the will of the Senate. I don't want to put the Senate through a timely vote when I know people we know what the outcome's going to be, so I won't call that amendment up. But I'd remind us, the only way we're really ever going to get control of our budget is to do the hard work of eliminating duplication, so that when we have a program such as the one that the manager of the bill has on today, that it's really directed, it's focused, it has metrics, and we know what we're getting for what we're spending. But most people don't realize we have 45 of these programs in 8 different departments spending $16 billion a year. And so what I would hope that we would take back and consider that this is a great movement on this one particular bill. And I congratulate the people that worked on it, both Senator Harkin and his staff, and Burr and Alexander and their staffs, because I think you've done a good job. But it's not enough, because you're still going to have 44 other programs. And you're still going to have programs that don't have a metric on it, that we're spending money on, that we don't know if they're affecting and accomplishing what we want to accomplish. So the whole purpose of the amendment was to force us to do that. And I understand that's not going to move, and I'm fine with that. I'll work in every other way behind the scenes to try to accomplish the same purpose.
Would Senator yield?
I'd yield for a question.
For a question. First of all, I just want to say I mentioned on the floor the other day that I had spent this weekend in Iowa at 2 early learning centers. And what became clear to me was the number of different conduits of funding and the different programs and the different qualifications and requirements and paperwork. I said at the time, I said, I'm confused. And he said, well, if you think you're confused, how do you think we feel about it? So that's why I was very supportive of the Enzi amendment that he offered. I don't know all the details of the senator's amendment, but the Enzi amendment came in and said, look, it was a mandate on HHS, I believe, to take a look at all these things and have a report back within a certain amount of time. I think it was 1 year, on how do we collapse these? How do we coordinate? I agree with the senator. There's way too many conduits into child care, and it is horribly confusing. And all these different requirements and stuff like that overlap, and it's just confusing. So I just want to ask the senator if he'd looked at the Enzi amendment, which gives him some time, and I can assure the senator that our committee, and I'm sure I can speak for Senator Burr on this and the Republican side, riding herd on this, because I think we all agree with the senator from Oklahoma. It's got to be fixed.
To answer the senator's question, I supported the Enzi amendment. I don't think it went far enough, because you're not going to look at some of the programs that are outside the purview of your committee. You know, you have 8 different federal departments running these programs that come from 8 different sets of authorizations. So the point is I'm going to work behind the scenes with Senator Burr, with Senator Harkin, to try to accomplish this. Now I'd like to call up Amendment 2830. And as the penny minute.
Would the senator withhold for a minute before he offers the amendment? Well, actually, I want to comment on how I'm going to work together with you. You go ahead and speak and offer your amendments, and then I'd like to comment and not engage in klutzy conversation by asking questions.
All right.
But I think we're on the same broadband.
Is there an objection to setting aside the pending amendment? Without objection, the clerk will report.
The senator from Oklahoma, Mr. Coburn, proposes an amendment number 2830.
I ask that the amendment be considered as read, and the desk has a modification of that amendment.
Without objection. Is there an objection to the modification? The amendment is so modified.
What we were trying to accomplish with this amendment, and I've cleared it on our side, and I think it's being cleared on your side, is to make sure that the significant amount of money that we spend in this area goes to people that really need it. So all this amendment does is require a self-certification when you acquire one of these grants that you don't have real assets greater than $1 million. If you do, maybe you ought to be spending your money rather than taxpayers' money on your kids' child care. And that's all this amendment does. It just says, if you got $1 million in assets, and all we're putting in there is say, in the application process, they have to put a box to check, I don't have assets in excess, real assets in excess of $1 million. So that we at least know that the vast majority of it, and by the way, 16% of this money has gone to people that are very wealthy in terms of these vouchers. And I've got that data, I just don't have it with, well, actually I may have it with me and I'll pull it up and speak about that in a minute. But the fact is we want this money to help the people that need help, not to help the people who don't need help. And so that's the purpose of this amendment. I've agreed to, if it becomes acceptable, to have a voice vote on this. And with that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President,